At 2 in the morning, as I completed the night shift's dispatch board, she texted me, "Your affection is a burden." For a moment, I fixated on the screen. The warehouse echoed only the old AC unit's hum and static pops from the wall radios. I responded with a single word, "Understood." Subsequently, I secured my phone and resumed organizing driver schedules. She neither called nor pursued the matter further, which said it all. For 4 years, we had been married in our Arts District loft conversion, living there for 3. She spent most nights doing customing work at a downtown studio, while I managed the taxi service catering to the city's graveyard shift. Our schedules seldom aligned during the week, but this hadn't seemed like an issue before, at least not to me. Upon returning home the next morning around 7, I found her asleep on the couch with her phone screen facing downwards on her chest, and an empty wine bottle on the coffee table. The room had an aroma of leftovers and candles. I chose not to rouse her. I ventured into the bedroom, switched my clothes, and dozed off until midday. Upon waking, she was absent. No note, no communication. Only a wine bottle untouched and a coffee cup abandoned in the sink remained as evidence. It was then I spotted Kyle's number in her call history from recent days. I wasn't prying. Her phone happened to be on the counter next to mine while it recharged. A notification popped up displaying his name. There were 3 calls, all made during the previous night. This neighbor resided 1 floor below us. His name was Kyle. He often hosted weekend parties and played music so loud that the bass could be felt through the floor. I'd exchanged mere greetings with him a dozen times in the hallway, always cordial, always offering to assist with groceries or pressing the elevator button. She had spoken of him before. Remarked that he once helped her carry her belongings up the stairs when the elevator was faulty. She described him as kind. She'd said he was simply being neighborly. At the time, I gave it little thought. Reflecting on it now, I revisited the events in my mind. The cryptic messages. The evenings she claimed to be working but had another's home sent. Her sudden habit of concealing her phone wherever she went. Minor occurrences. Incidents I'd chosen to disregard as insignificant because I didn't want them to hold meaning. I assigned one of my drivers to handle the evening dispatches and informed him I would be unreachable for a while. I then settled at the kitchen counter, waiting. She arrived home around 6, wearing the same clothes from yesterday, her hair tied back in that usual fatigue after a long studio session, yet her hands were free of stains or smudges. Unaware of my observation, she didn't greet me upon entering. Instead, she merely dropped her bag by the door and headed straight to the bathroom. The sound of the shower starting echoed in the room. I glanced at her bag. The zipper was halfway open, revealing her phone, a lighter, and a set of keys that weren't ours. I hadn't touched the keyboard, hadn't questioned its status. Upon emerging from the shower, she found me seated at the counter, laptop active and dealing with payroll as if nothing had transpired. She filled a glass with water and leaned against the sink, remaining silent for some time. Eventually, she inquired about my work schedule that evening. I confirmed my plans to work. She acknowledged this with a nod and retreated into the bedroom. That week, I began observing more subtly. I ceased filling in the blanks, stopped querying her whereabouts, halted sending daytime texts, and forwent suggesting dinner pickups. My routine remained unaltered, departing for the warehouse at 9 each night, returning in the mornings. However, I began noting minor details. The attire she donned, her hours, her adoption of a phone password unknown to me. On Thursday, I returned home unexpectedly, around 3 in the morning. I informed my night shift supervisor I wasn't feeling good and delegated the last 2 hours to him. Upon entering, the loft was dimly lit as she wasn't home. I sat on the couch and waited. At 3:15, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Then voices, hers and another person's, a man's voice, soft and laughing. The footsteps halted just outside our door. I heard her utter something indistinct. Then quietness. Then the sound of her key in the lock. She entered alone. Initially, she didn't notice me. She was smiling. When she spotted me sitting there, her smile faded. She paused briefly, then shut the door behind her and put down her bag as if it were an ordinary night. I inquired about her whereabouts. She said the studio. Claimed a client kept them late and they'd gone for drinks afterwards. I remained silent, merely looking at her. She moved past me into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Her hands trembled slightly, enough for me to see it when she reached for a bottle of water. She informed me about the person in the hallway with her. It was Kyle. We both happened to meet at the elevator, and he escorted her to the entrance due to the late hour. I acknowledged this. Inquiring about her smile, she remained silent, only gazing at me for a while before retreating to bed, stating exhaustion. I remained on the couch till dawn. The subsequent day, I carried out an action I hadn't done in months. I emptied my schedule and stayed home, informing my manager that I needed the night off, citing family matters which he accepted without queries. She departed for the studio around noon. Through the peephole, I watched her walk towards the hallway, deviating left toward the stairwell instead of the elevator. After a 5-minute wait, I ventured out and trailed her up to the rooftop terrace. Kyle was already there, seated on one of the benches near the edge. She approached him, taking a seat near him, closer than usual neighbors would sit. He placed his hand on her thigh, and she remained still. For approximately 2 minutes, I stood there, observing them in silence as they sat close without much conversation. His hand rested where it was, and then she inclined her head on his shoulder. This gesture seemed conclusive. I softly shut the door behind me and descended to the loft once more. I seated myself at the kitchen table and powered up my laptop. I scrutinized our bank accounts, subscriptions, the lease agreement, all accumulated over 4 years of shared life. Then I initiated changes. Initially, I eliminated my name from the streaming services. Next, I canceled the meal kit subscription she frequently used. Lastly, I discontinued the grocery delivery service. These were minor alterations that she wouldn't detect immediately. Upon her return an hour later, she strolled in as if nothing had transpired and inquired about ordering dinner for us. I declined, stating I had already eaten. She casually dismissed my response and ordered a meal for herself. She settled on the couch, browsing her phone while waiting for her order to arrive. I remained seated at the table with my laptop. She didn't inquire about my work. Over the ensuing fortnight, I persisted in my activities. I closed our shared credit card and transferred half of our savings into a new account. I contacted the leasing office and had them reissue the lease with only her name listed. I told them I was leaving for work-related reasons. They didn't probe further. They merely dispatched the necessary paperwork. I settled my portion of the rent until the end of the month, then ceased. She didn't realize it immediately, but on the first day of the following month, I received a text from her. "Did you pay rent?" I responded with "Examine the lease." She called me 3 consecutive times. I declined to answer. Later that night, she appeared at my warehouse around midnight. Ignoring the dispatch desk, she strode directly into my office. Her face was flushed, and her voice carried enough volume for 2 of my employees to glance up from their devices. She sought an explanation for what I had done and why her name was the sole one on the lease now. The bank notified her concerning the closure of their joint account. I conveyed to her that she received what she desired, freedom, no obligations. Her reaction suggested confusion. She considered my action immature. She insisted that abandoning responsibilities wasn't appropriate. She couldn't specify remaining duties. She merely stood there breathing heavily. Then she exited. I returned to the duty board. One of my drivers asked if everything was all right. I said it was fine. A week later, she attempted a different tactic. She texted asking for conversation. She mentioned we needed to settle matters like mature adults and didn't want our relationship to conclude this way. I remained silent. After 2 days, another message arrived. This one contained more words. She admitted that our situation had been challenging. She suggested perhaps we had both erred. She expressed her continued affection for me. I read it twice, then I erased it. At month's end, utilities were cut off power initially, followed by water. I found out about it when she phoned me from Kyle's device weeping. She explained that the bills were in my name and she wasn't aware they hadn't been paid. I informed her I had transferred everything to her name 3 weeks prior, suggesting she should have checked her mail. She terminated the call on me. Post-call, there was silence for roughly a week. Then I began hearing tidbits through one of my drivers residing in the same building. He mentioned she'd been staying at Kyle's residence. He described the loft as mostly dark most evenings and observed her carrying boxes down the stairs one afternoon. I declined to seek further information. The following night, she reappeared at the warehouse again. Unlike before, she was no longer enraged. Instead, she seemed exhausted, her attire wrinkled, and her hair tied back haphazardly. She requested we could go somewhere private to converse, just the 2 of us. I declined, stating my workload. She pleaded it would only take 10 minutes. I stared at her for a while, then informed my night supervisor I'd be gone for 20 minutes and left with her. We settled in her vehicle without it running. She held the wheel, gazing straight ahead. She confessed to making a mistake, claimed ignorance about her actions, admitted Kyle wasn't as he appeared, mentioned his disorganized life, and expressed difficulty staying at his place due to his own rental issues. I asked if this was hinting something towards me. Her eyes were glistening, but she hadn't yet cried. She expressed a desire to fix things, suggested counseling, and proposed a fresh start. I informed her I had already embarked on a new beginning without her. At that point, she began sobbing earnestly. She accused me of being harsh, said I was unkind, and asserted she didn't deserve this treatment. I exited the car, and she remained outside the warehouse for another 10 minutes. I observed her from the window. Her head was bent on the steering wheel, then she eventually ignited the engine and departed. The subsequent day, a message arrived from her sibling. She requested that I phone her, stating it was crucial and not about taking sides, but rather listening to her perspective. I opted not to call. A week thereafter, my chauffeur informed me she had vacated the loft entirely. He declared the premises devoid of occupants. He stated the landlord was searching for a new tenant due to her early lease termination. This implied she would incur penalties. Additionally, I learned Kyle's residence wasn't functioning as planned. Regardless, I didn't feel remorseful about it. Concurrently, a legal representative contacted me. He wasn't hers, but mine. I had engaged his services a month prior and directed him to initiate the necessary documentation. He informed me that all was set. He merely required my signature for filing. I complied the following day. She was served 2 weeks later, as indicated by a final, wordless message she sent me. Picture of divorce documents on a table with an empty coffee cup nearby, no reaction from me. The procedure took 3 months without any dispute or theatrics. She chose not to oppose it nor request anything. I believe she understood there was nothing left to contend for. The day it was finalized, I was at the warehouse handling end-of-month reports. An email from my lawyer arrived on my phone confirming all was done. I read it only once, then shut my laptop and resumed scheduling drivers for the weekend. One of my colleagues asked if I fancied a beer after work. I agreed. We visited a bar 2 blocks away. Seated in a booth near the back, he inquired about my well-being. I replied that I was okay. He didn't persist. For a while, we drank in silence. Later, he mentioned spotting her at a downtown cafe the previous week. He said she was with someone else, not Kyle. I chose not to ask who it was. He added she appeared altered, thinner, tired. He said she hadn't noticed him. Spent the entire time seated in a corner, engrossed in my phone. After finishing my beer, I ordered another round. As I drove home that night, I unintentionally turned onto the street where the old building stood. Without conscious thought, I found myself on that road. The building's lights were off where our loft used to be. A for rent sign now hung in the ground floor window. I continued driving. A month later, I encountered her sister at a gas station, pumping gas 2 spaces away. She recognized me before I could retreat into my truck. She approached, stating she wanted to speak. Acknowledging that she owed me nothing, she felt compelled to convey a message. I asked her to keep it brief. She informed me of my ex's predicament. She had lost her workspace due to falling behind on chair rental fees, was temporarily residing with friends, and seeking work wherever possible. She emphasized that she wasn't asking for help, merely wanted me to be aware. I questioned why I should care. She couldn't provide an answer for that. Glanced at her for a moment, she inquired about my well-being and departed towards her car. I concluded refueling and left too. That evening, thoughts returned to the message she'd sent me past midnight several months back. Words that altered my life forever. "Your love is a burden." Recalled sitting in a warehouse, fixated on those words. Recollected typing only one word before locking my phone. That night, I unconsciously made a decision without realizing it to no longer bear something she didn't want anymore. And I never did. Half a year after the divorce, I relocated to a more compact residence nearby the warehouse. A single bedroom, tidy, tranquil, no remnants of the past, kept my routine unchanged, worked nights, handled dispatch, managed finances, expanded my business. One of my colleagues once queried if I ever pondered dating again. I said perhaps at some point. He remarked I appeared to be coping well alone. I said I was. Then one evening, my phone chimed with a notification. An unknown user messaged me on social media, a message I nearly dismissed. However, something compelled me to open it. It was her. Her message was extensive, acknowledging that I might not wish to hear from her. She accepted silence in response and expressed remorse for past events. A genuine remorse, not the one offered in the car outside the warehouse. She admitted to her actions and understood why I chose to depart as I did. She didn't hold any grudges against me. Instead, she spoke of personal growth, seeking help and self-discovery, no longer requiring someone else to feel alive. She made no demands from me. All she sought was for me to be aware of her apology. I read it thrice before closing the app and setting my phone aside. That night and subsequent days, I did not respond. A week passed, then 2 weeks. I never replied. I contemplated what I would say if I did respond. Pondered over whether it made a difference. Contemplated if I desired to revisit that door, however slightly. In the end, I chose not to. Certain situations require no reaction. Some apologies arrive too late, not because the pain lingers, but because the one who suffered has ceased to exist. I erased the message. Then I blocked her account. Within the same week, I added 2 new drivers and promoted my night manager to operations head. The business was thriving, growing. Plans for expanding into another county were set by year-end. One evening after a long shift, I sat in my truck outside the warehouse, gazing at the city lights extending before me. I reminisced about my former life, the loft, the sleepless nights speculating her whereabouts, the burden of carrying something that no longer existed. I didn't yearn for it. I ignited the engine and departed for home. The flat was empty when I entered. I flicked on a light, prepared dinner. I settled at the table with my computer, scrutinizing the itinerary for the coming week. The silence was tranquil, uncomplicated, and exclusively mine, and that sufficed.